Hi, my name's Peter Willis. I'm a member of the BMFA Achievement Scheme Review Committee. And a lot of you have been asking us for guidance videos on doing the fixed wing A and B test. And this video is the flying part of the fixed wing A test. Now, if you haven't already done so, I suggest you watch the introduction video, which will tell you about where to find all the documentation and give you some guidance on preparing to take your A or B test. But in the meantime, let's go and find Duncan McClure and get him to show us what's involved in the fixed wing A test. Right, Duncan, would you like to take us through the pre-flight checks that candidate will be expected to do for an A test?
Sure, Peter, pleasure. Okay, obviously I've taken the model out of the car and I put it together and I checked the airframe for transit damage while I was doing that. But what I'm going to do now is run through the 5-point check that's in the handbook. And the other thing I would suggest is that when you're doing this for your test is that you follow pretty much the same sort of technique with your examiner. So if you actually verbalise what you're checking and talk it through with the examiner, or talk to the examiner and tell him that, I think that's really useful. So first thing I'm going to do is have a look inside. I can see the servos and all the linkages, so I'm just going to make sure that they're all nice and secure. I did this when I was putting it together, but I'll do it now for the benefit of the video. So I'm just making sure all the linkages and the servos and the receivers are all nice and secure and where it should be. I'm also checking that the wing bolts are tight. And while I'm checking the security of the wings, I'll look at the struts, make sure the pins are in and the R-clips to hold the pins in. Just once again, looking over for damage, any transit damage, nothing visible on the top surface of the wing, on the vertical surface of the tail, or the top surface of the stabilizer. I'll have a quick look underneath. No obvious signs of damage or creasing, particularly in the furs, or the stabilizer, and the other wing. So, all good in terms of airframe security. What we're going to do now is I'm going to start at the front and work my way back. So first thing I'm doing, checking the condition of the propeller, making sure it's nice and secure on the motor, making sure there's no cracks or chips in the propeller. It's not something I've stuck back together. Obviously this is an electric model, so I'm making sure that it's the right sort of prop for an electric. Even more important the other way around, if this was an IC model, you need to make sure that you've not got an electric prop on it, because they're not generally rated for the sort of loads from an IC motor. So, it's the right prop, prop's not damaged, no cracks or chips or anything. The propeller's secure, and at the same time I can check to make sure the motor's secure, it's not come loose from the firewall or anything like that. So I'm happy about that. What I'm going to look at next is the undercarriage, and again I'm looking for security of the undercarriage. This model's got spats, so I'm making sure the wheels rotate freely so they've not become fouled in the spats with any mud or whatever. Same here, wheel rotates freely. The main undercarriage leg is good and firm. Same this side. That wheel rotates nicely. What I'm going to look at next are all the control surfaces. And at the same time I'm looking at the surfaces, I'll look at the security of the servos for those in the wings, and also all the linkages. So this model's interesting because, as you can see, it's foam. So it has a mixture of live hinges, in other words the foam bends, as well as inset plastic hinges. So I'm going to check on all of those. So I'm going to start from this wing, and I'll just give a gentle pull on each of the control surfaces at the hinge points. Same with the flaps, give them a pull. What I'm going to do now is tip the model over. Can you see that all right, Peter?
Yes, thank you, Duncan.
Okay, cool. Just checking the linkages. See the servos are secure, and the ball joints are secure. Okay, I'm going to go around. I go around the back. I should give you a good view. Check on the ones on this side. Giving these hinges a little pull. All good. Checking these linkages. Fine. Look at the ones on the tail. Check the surfaces. Check the individual hinges. Go around this side. There we go. You want to pull. Same on the rudder. There are actually, I'll rotate it because you can see the rudder linkages up here. check the servos for that at the other end, and the same with the elevators. So there. So we've checked the model over, we've checked integrity of the airframe, we've checked all the control surfaces and hinges, we've checked all the linkages and all the servos, security of the undercarriage, security of the motor and propeller. So we're all good to go.
Okay, let's go and commit to aviation.
Okay. Okay, you saw earlier this is an electric model, and I've chosen not to make the model live until I'm actually right on the edge of the strip. So what I'm going to do is come round the back of the model so it's restrained by my physical presence, and I can do everything I need to do in terms of connecting up the model from behind. Before I do that, I just make sure I've got the correct model memory, I've got good transmitter battery, all the trims and rate switches are where I expect them to be, but I will check all of those things before I launch. But what I'm going to do now is just make the model live. I don't know if you could hear that, Peter, but the speed controller gave me 6 beeps because it's a 6-cell battery, so it thinks the battery's in good condition. I did actually check the battery with a bat stat before I put it in. What I'm going to do now is my immediate pre-flight checks before I launch. So I'm checking all of the controls. So we've got right aileron, left aileron, making sure they go in opposite directions, up elevator, down elevator, right rudder, left rudder, and this model's got flaps. So we'll cycle the flaps, make sure everything's working fine there. What I'm then going to do is repeat all of that, but at full throttle. Okay, the other thing I'd like to demonstrate before I launch is also that the fail-safe's set correctly. So what I'm going to do, apply a small amount of throttle, switch off the transmitter, and make sure the model goes to idle, which it does. Okay, and I come back on. What I'm going to do is, because this is a Spectrum radio, I'm actually going to reboot the whole of the radio system. So I'm going to disconnect and start again. I'm just going to do a very quick power check.
A couple of things Duncan did not mention. Although this model has a gyro, it was switched off for these demonstration flights, as it would have to be for any test other than a BPC. Also, he had undertaken all the usual centre of gravity and setup checks, as well as a range check on this model before we commenced filming. Having completed a quick visual scan of the airspace and takeoff strip, the first flying part of the test is the takeoff and turn crosswind, whilst climbing up to circuit height. This should not be too high, about 100 to 150 feet is usually enough. Once reaching circuit height, the examiner is looking for level flight in the straight sections of the circuit, with careful use of throttle if necessary to maintain that level flight, and good use of throttle and elevator in the turns to ensure the model remains level. The manoeuvre is completed once the model passes back across the takeoff strip at the point you commence the takeoff run. The model should not normally need trimming, but if it does, the examiner would expect to see you complete this during this first circuit. Once you have completed this circuit, you can position the model, usually via another circuit, for the next manoeuvre, which is the figure of 8. This commences as you fly straight along the strip. Then just before your model approaches the centre point of the manoeuvre, which will be straight in front of you and the examiner, you commence the first 90 degrees of the left-hand circle until the model is flying away from you in line with the centre point. Then roll right and carefully complete the 360-degree turn of the right-hand circle. When the model is flying away from you again along the centre point, you bank left to complete the remaining 270 degrees of the left-hand circle. The manoeuvre is completed once the model has passed the centre point flying straight along the strip again. It is quite difficult to see the actual shape of this manoeuvre on video when viewed from the ground. So let's look at that again from above. It's important to remember that the examiner is looking for circles of similar size, as well as the changes in circle direction being straight in front of you both. If there is a strong wind, then the in-to-wind parts of the manoeuvre may appear to take a little longer to complete, and the now-wind parts a little faster, to maintain the size and shape. You can also see that Duncan had to constantly adjust the bank angle to keep the circles at a consistent size and shape. The next manoeuvre is the rectangular circuit and power on landing. This commences once again as you fly past the centre point, flying along the strip. The crosswind, downwind and base leg elements need to be straight sections with 90-degree turns at the corners of the circuit. The examiner will expect you to make all the usual circuit position calls, and as you turn final approach, they will be watching for good use of elevator to control speed, throttle to control height, and expect to see a quick glance at the strip to ensure all is clear and safe for landing. The examiner is looking for a fully controlled, well-positioned and safe landing. After your model has landed and come to a halt, the examiner will then ask you to taxi back round for another takeoff, which of course will be subject to any other flyer's requirements at the time. If there has been any concern about the model after the landing, it is okay to tell the examiner you would like to check the model over before letting it get airborne again. Don't forget to call takeoff before starting the takeoff roll and climb out into the circuit as before. Complete a full circuit, climbing up to and then maintaining level flight, and then overfly straight along the strip to complete this manoeuvre. The next manoeuvre is the opposite direction circuit, so you will need to manoeuvre your model to change circuit direction. Don't forget to warn other flyers of the manoeuvre. In this case, Duncan is doing a procedure turn at the upwind end of the runway, and then to warn them of the opposite direction circuit you plan to fly. Once again, the examiner is looking for well-coordinated level turns and level flight in the straight sections of the circuit. The purpose of this part of the test is to ensure you are confident and capable of flying in the opposite direction, as some model flyers are not so comfortable flying opposite to their normal circuit direction, which has usually been dictated by the prevailing winds at their club flying strip. The final part of the test is the power off landing. Your examiner will ask you to climb up to about 200 feet, and then they will call your simulated engine failure somewhere overhead. You should then shut the throttle, make your dead stick call, and make a glide approach to the strip, making full allowance for the wind direction and speed on the day. If anything, it's better to be a little high on final and then use some gentle S-turns to lose height, rather than try to stretch a glide with the consequential risk of a stall or undershoot of the runway. The landing should still be fully controlled with sufficient speed to complete the flare and touchdown. Depending on the protocol at your club strip, you can check to enter the live strip to recover your model, or taxi back to the edge of the strip or the safe point on the taxiway to recover it. Under no circumstances should the model be taxied towards the pilot box or the pits area. Walk out to it. Whilst Duncan disconnects the battery and recovers the model, just remember you need to have brought with you your BMFA membership card and any documents that prove your legal operation of the model for the final part of the test, the questions and the paperwork. Okay Duncan, what would a student be expected to do as part of their post-flight checks?
Okay, Peter, they're pretty much the same as the pre-flight checks. Even more important if there's been, you know, if it was a hard landing or perhaps a model cartwheel or something that that might have caused some damage. But basically it's the same thing again. So we're just going to check over the general integrity of the airframe. I'm going to start at the back this time. So it's the control surfaces at the back, checking the fuzz, checking the control surfaces on the wing. All look good. Just giving the hinges a little pull, just checking for any damage, but we didn't cartwheel or nose over or anything when we landed. But I will check security of the undercarriage, because obviously we had to use that when we were landing. That's all good. Check the security of the wings, security of the nose, security of the motor, security of the prop, and condition of the prop. I will just have a quick look at the linkages underneath, but as I say, nothing untoward happened during the flight, so we're not expecting to see any significant damage, but it's always worth a check. And I think that's one of the really great advantages of actually cleaning your model, particularly if it's IC. When you're actually going through the process of cleaning it, you don't realise, but you're actually automatically checking over, hopefully, all the main bits of the model. Okay.
Great, thank you, Duncan.
No probs. Quite happy there.
Well, another successful and more importantly safe day's flying. If you found this video of some use, please let us know. We're trying our best to give you as much help and guidance as possible to encourage you to take your A or B test. You can contact us via the Facebook group for the Achievement Scheme, or via the Achievement Scheme website, which you can get to through the main BMFA site. So bye for now.
Oh.